stock profit. In this video, I'll talk about deferred tax. Before we begin, it's good to go to settings and always good to check that there are no transaction errors or in fact any errors over here. And when we scroll down, we have the calculate deferred tax checkbox ticked. If this is unticked, it will not calculate deferred tax. For securities that don't issue deferred tax, then we would need to have this option ticked, and it would make the spreadsheet run more leaner and faster. So to begin, I have some example transactions here. These are just sample transactions over the years. And if we go to summary, we can see a quick summary of these. So what it shows here is that the realized cost base, and if you hover over the menus, you can get a bit of description on how everything is calculated. And the realized value is what we sold the securities for, and the realized cost base is the cost base less the deferred tax amount. So the deferred tax amount is this column. So cost base less this column is the realized cost base. And we can see we have our gain, our income from our dividends, and our income from our trust, and the total gain and percentage. To add the dividends and income trust, there is a sheet over here where you can add all the information and the income trust. Okay, so let's go to the deferred tax. So when a security issues their tax statements, you'll get a document each financial year, such as this. So this document here is an example document from Abacus. And if you scroll down, you will see tax deferred amounts. So this is the figure that you need to put in to calculate your capital gains. So this figure will go into the year ended for 30th of June 2019 as an example. Let's go back. So the 30th of June 2019, I've added the figure here. Okay, so let's go to our profit and loss. Our profit and loss, it's explained in another video. For this instance, I'll just select a Abacus ticker, ABP. You can select all tickers if you like. So let's select, the method is first in, first out. I'll show you can also select all these different methods. So let's say first in, first out, and we select the first in transaction, which is 21st or the 3rd. Now, if I change the sale dates, for example, I can put the more recent sale date, and you'll see the figure changes there. So let's do this, and I will show you just a brief example how it all works. Okay, so this is a summary here. It shows you the profit for each transaction. So this is the sale transaction, and these are the available units. So we have 3,834 selling units, and we bought 67 in this instance, 700 in this instance, 938 in this instance. And as we add more transactions, this number goes down. So, scrolling across, we can see our deferred tax. It's automatically calculated here. So if we go to our deferred sheet, we can see here we have a total deferred amount of 3,824. We haven't allocated anything at the moment, and the balance is still 3,824. So if we process these transactions, this will be deducted from the balance of deferred. The other thing we can do, we can also override the deferred amount. So for example, if we want to allocate nothing for this transaction, we can put 0. If we wanted to allocate $500 for this transaction, we could enter 500 here. The thing to be aware of, however, is that these figures here are not automatically updated once you use the override figures here. So it's good to be aware of that. It doesn't matter, you can still allocate this amount, but when you use override, it's good to not mix them together. So in this instance, I will remove these two transactions. So let's scroll across. So for this transaction, I have 0 deferred tax for the first transaction and 500 for the second. Now, if we scroll across again, we can see the same information here. So 0 deferred tax for the first transaction and 500 for the second. To process this transaction, we need to put it into a sheet. So I have made an example sheet here, 2022. And for this example, I am going to put all the transactions in here. So just to show how the calculations work. In real life, you'll separate them by years or financial years. So to do this transaction, let's scroll to the beginning again and make sure the sheet matches the sheet we're going to put it in. And then we'll open up the extension, capital gains, and we click on update profit and loss. Okay, so if we go to our profit and loss for that year, we will see the transactions. So over here it says we had 0 deferred tax, we had overridden it, and we had put 500 for the second transaction. And this shows the V capital loss, this amount, which these figures will be explained in another video as well. So when we go back to our profit and loss, everything is reset and the override figures are also reset. So when we pick another transaction, it's automatically calculated again this time. The other thing to note is when we click on the deferred sheet, we've got here now a summary of our deferred securities, and because we had allocated $500 for deferred tax for future transactions, this is the balance of our deferred tax that's available. Now, this is calculated best fit case basis. So it calculates the total amount of deferred tax liable and proportionally puts it based on the units by units. So if you have 100 units versus 1,000 units, the 100 units will get less deferred tax allocated. If we go to our transactions, we can see here that deferred tax here is $500 for that buy transaction. And we can see our base cost as $4,965. And the available units for this sale transaction, which haven't been allocated, as 3,067. So let's go through quickly and process all the sale transactions. Before I do that, let me just go to summary. Which I will want to show you how to cross-check the figures. So the deferred tax, as I said, for Abacus was $3,824. So if we go to our deferred, we can see this figure matches the summary figure. There it is. Okay, so let's go through to process all the profit and loss. So let's go back here. We'll open up the extension, capital gains, and we can go autofill, and this will allocate all the transactions here, so we don't have to manually enter them all. And then we can update profit and loss. And once that is done, we can press it in again. So if we, since that last transaction, we click on deferred, we can see the allocation amount is now 1,558. So let's do it till this allocated amount is the maximum, which is the total deferred. Okay, so we've done all the transactions. Now that when I click on autofill, nothing appears. So if we go to our deferred, we can see total deferred, total allocated, and the zero balance. And if we go to our transactions, we can see all the figures here. So if we scroll across and we close this, we can see all the deferred tax there and all the cost base. So as I said before, this is good to double check your figures. If you're not sure you've done your calculations right, you can cross check with the summary. So let's go to click on sum, and let's just add all these up because these are all ABP securities. So this figure, deferred tax, 3,824.50 will add up to this amount. The next figure, if we go to summary, for example, we have realized cost base. This is the cost base less deferred tax. So it's 23,658. And if we go to our profit and loss report here, so we've got our cost base here, less deferred tax. So let's do another sum. And it is 23,658. So it matches. So it's really good to get all these figures to match, just to double check your figures. And the realized value, this figure here is the sale price. So if we go to our report again, so this would be the transacted value. So let's do a summary. And this figure here is 31,671, and that should match this figure here. So this is a really good calculator to allocate your deferred tax and how to allocate it. So thank you for watching, and I hope it helps some people.